Hello and welcome to This Inspired Life. My name is Andy Taylor, and in this video we're talking about showing up, responding to what shows up, and understanding. So first off, I want to say thank you to everyone that's become involved in these videos and left comments and liked the videos and shared them. It really means a great deal to me, and I'd love for you to join us on this little adventure, this project of mine. And it's ongoing. There's no end to this. It's just something I'm going to keep doing and keep doing. As long as I've got stuff to share, I will keep sharing them. So without further ado, let's get into the content. So what we're talking about today is showing up and responding to what shows up. Okay, now that's the first part. That's kind of the two things go together there. And then we're talking about understanding. So showing up and responding to what shows up, I was first introduced to this as a coach, actually. Michael Neal, one of my great mentors and the guy that I've learned an immeasurable amount from in the coaching business, actually introduced me to this when he was asked in an interview what he thought was the ultimate technique for coaching. What's the best approach for coaching? What's the best tactic? What's the best strategy to use in a coaching session? He said, well, it's simple. It's the simplest coaching, it's the simplest coaching method in the world. And that is you show up and then you respond to what shows up. And I took that away and I loved that from the outset. As soon as I heard it, I was, yeah, that's me. That's how I'm going to live my life. And that made me think in itself, just that going off in my head made me think, well, actually, yeah, this doesn't just apply to coaching interactions. This applies or is applicable in every aspect of our life. So you think about let's think about a popular subject for a lot of people. It's finances and money and income. Every time you're faced with a difficult bill or a difficult challenge with regards to money, if you're the type of person who goes away and buries their head in the sand, you're not showing up at all. Okay, so the first stage of that, the first part of that, showing up, is really important for you. Because what happens is that when you show up fully, and I'll explain what I mean by fully in just a moment, but when you actually show up to a situation, to a set of circumstances, to an event, to an obstacle that you're facing in your designing, you're creating your dream life, when you actually show up to those situations, those circumstances, and those obstacles, you actually get a much better chance of pushing through and overcoming them just by showing up, because so many people don't. Okay, so if you're one of two people who are pursuing the same objective, you're heading after the same desired outcome, if you're the type of person who, no matter what happens, shows up, and as hard a hit as you might take, if somebody deals, something out of your control happens and it deals you a blow, rather than run away and hide your head in the sand, you show up and say, well, okay, this has happened. This is a thing now. It's painful. It hurts. It's hard. But I'm going to show up anyway. And then I'm going to respond to whatever shows up in me in order to overcome it. When you do that, you can conquer anything. You can overcome anything. And I personally have been, in that situation where things have been going along nicely for me with regards to relationships, with regards to finances, with regards to business and, my general well-being. And then I've been dealt a blow. I had a massive car accident last May, that really very nearly ended me. It ended my car, which I was gutted about, because I love that car, but it nearly ended me. And it really made me take those steps back that I talk about in the videos on awareness and say, well, okay, what is actually important to me? Because nothing that I thought was important, or very little of what I thought was important, is actually important. What is important? What am I prioritizing? And what should I be prioritizing? So it made me think, number one. But then from that point onwards, I realized that so much of the time I was half-assing it. That is to say that I was there, but I wasn't really showing up. Okay, my head was distracted. I was distracted by what I posted on Facebook earlier in the day, and would anybody like it, or would anybody respond to it, or would anybody find it funny, instead of focusing on what was right in front of me and who was right in front of me. So when I kind of had that accident, it really shook me out of that mindset where I thought I was able to multitask. I thought I was a great multitasker. But in fact, what I was doing was dispersing my focus. And there's a really great analogy with regards to focus, in that you have set, let's use an example where you have 5 focus points to spend at any given time. Okay, so if you're studying for an exam and your 5 focus points are squarely on that exam, you hear your phone go off with a Facebook notification. How many of you can genuinely hold your hand up and say, I'm not distracted by that at all? Okay, very few, very few. I mean, even I'm guilty of that sometimes. So one of your focus points then goes to Facebook or whatever it was that went off. Let's say you've got your 4 focus points and the 1 on Facebook, 4 on study. The phone rings, keeps ringing and goes to answer phone. You're going to wonder who that was, even though you don't answer it because you think, oh, I'm going to avoid the distraction of answering that phone call. If you don't answer it, your focus is going to drift anyway. So you're going to lose another focus point to, who the hell was that? Wonder what they wanted. So your focus can shift very easily, and you can get distracted very, very easily. So you then end up with a very split focus. And your focus on your study is lessened by every distraction. And even those distractions, they are lessened by other distractions. So, even if who responded to you on Facebook or whatever it was might seem important to you, if something's going on, the distraction of the phone call distracts you from that. So it's like a vicious cycle that happens where our focus is shifted and our focus is dispersed over multiple places so that we're unable to really focus on one thing. That is the definition of not showing up. All right, so you may have shown up with the intention of studying, but as distractions came and went, your focus drifts, so you're no longer there. You're no longer truly present. And this is where I'm getting into what I mean by truly present, which is where you are with somebody, and instead of having your phone on and texting and then, that's not being fully present. Being fully present is when they are the center of your attention. They are whatever's going on right in front of you, whether it's a situation, whether it's another person, whether it's a conversation on the phone, whether it's reading a book, whether it's doing a particular task or working on a project. That is your sole focus. So showing up works with your focus as well as everything else and responding to what shows up, because it just makes it so much easier. Every interaction, every obstacle you might face on your road to success and achievement is so much easier dealt with when you can show up and fully. Okay, so giving your full attention to someone or something is showing up. So what about responding to what shows up? Well, when you really are present and you can really sit with an idea, with a person and have a conversation with a person and be fully present, then you will notice more about what happens. You will notice more about the body language of the other person. You will notice more about the nuances of the situation and the potential opportunities contained within a situation or an obstacle that you might be facing. So you can then respond to those things. So you then get to respond and say, well, actually, this thing has happened and it's really knocked me back. But what I did notice, sitting with it and being fully present with it and showing up to it, I noticed that there's an opportunity in blah, in this, or this. And that's really crucial. I love that about this process, is the fact that when you fully show up, you are so much more aware. There's that word again. You are so much more alert to potential opportunities and potential responses you can make. But with another person, it is even more critical because you are then there for them. Now, so many coaches and so many coaching courses try and teach different techniques for being present in conversation, such as active listening. Now, active listening is all very well, but how about just listening? That is to say, instead of go to a Tony Robbins event or a Michael Neal event or a Mind Valley event and sit there and take copious amounts of notes, just sit there and listen. Look around you. Pay attention to what's going on. Be present. Show up. Right? If you show up, the information is going to go in anyway because you are having the experience of being there. You are having the experience of that knowledge being passed on to you. Whereas if you've got your head buried in a book making copious notes, thinking, oh, I can make notes now, I don't want to forget any of this, I want to make notes now, I can have the experience later on. It doesn't work like that. Okay, experience doesn't work like that. You can't have an experience at a later date. Have the experience now, because that way the information sinks in even more. And it's the same with conversation with somebody. When you are fully present and you show up to the conversation and you just listen rather than actively listen and try and think 2 steps ahead. Oh, well, they start telling you something about what's going on with their wife or their girlfriend or their partner or their husband or whatever it might be, or their kids. Most people are guilty of formulating answers before the other person has finished speaking. Okay, so you get 2 lines into conversation. Somebody's talking to you about a specific situation they're having with their kids. And before they finish their second sentence, you're already formulating your response. So by the time they finish their 19th or 20th sentence in that conversation, in their part of the conversation, you have not listened to anything after sentence number 3 because your focus has been distracted on creating your response. So chances are, by the time the opportunity arises, without cutting somebody off to give your response that you've carefully crafted, they may well have answered their own question in that conversation, in their part of the conversation. So essentially your response is outdated and not needed. So that's a problem that a lot of people have, and it's bewildering to me that there are still courses on this. There are still coaches and there are still coaching programs that teach active listening. Just listen. Just sit and listen. Pay attention to somebody when they're talking to you. Nod along sagely to let them know that you are there and you're listening. But rather than think about your response, listen to what they're saying and continue listening until they finish. Okay? If they want your input, they will ask for it. Or you can wait until they've finished, and then you can use all of the information, not just a snippet, to craft a thought through response from a loving, caring perspective, right? So that is showing up. And showing up for me is just sitting and listening and being present. Okay, really good example of this. I'm actually a really good example of this. And I don't say that to brag, but I'm in a relationship with an amazing woman. And she is the love of my life, my fiance. And she's just such a wonderful woman. And the reason, we talk about this quite often, and the reason I think that we are so great together is the fact that we both do this. We both just show up for each other. So I'm having a bad day. She will sit and she will listen. And she won't interrupt. She will listen, and she will become involved in the conversation if it's needed. And vice versa. If she's having a bad day or a rough time, I will just sit there and listen to her. I'll be there for her. I will be a sponge. She describes me as her unicorn and her rock, which is such number one, it's so cute. But number 2 is the fact that, I'm there. I'm a place that she can hold on to in a turbulent world. And she's there for me in the same way. But it's like that is the epitome of showing up, and relationships are really good examples of how this works. So the second part of it is responding to what shows up. And in the context of the conversation with a friend, you listen, not actively listen, you just listen because you show up. And then once they have finished talking and they've finished airing their concerns or their problems or their despair in some cases, you then respond to that because that has shown up. Okay, so what they say in their conversation, in their part of the conversation, what they talk to you about, what they are airing to you in front of you is what has shown up, okay, in that conversation. So what might show up, what might start as a conversation about, oh, I'm doing okay, but it's not too bad. Life's pretty shitty, but we're getting there. If you let them go and just let them talk and you listen, you will pick up on things such as, their 18-year-old is having issues at college, their 16-year-old is having issues at high school or school. And, you can then, that has shown up, may not have been the intention of the individual to raise it, but because you were there and listening and you showed up for them, they will feel comfortable in sharing with you more and more and more. And that is what shows up in the conversation. And you just get to respond to that. So you get to take in all of that information, you take in what has shown up, and then you can craft a loving, caring response from the place of someone who holds them dear and cares about them and wants them to be happy. So that's the conversation with a friend. The relationship example is no different because my fiance and I, as I said, we show up for each other constantly. And what we love about it is the fact that it allows us to respond to what shows up in the world and in our lives collectively and individually together, right? Because for me, relationships are teamwork. If you're in a relationship with someone who isn't on the same team as you, then sorry to have to break this to you, but you have issues. Because if you are not playing as a team in a relationship, then there's going to be a push and pull, which can cause friction. It can cause fractures in that relationship. And a really good analogy that my fiance and I use to describe relationships and good relationships is that they are living beings. We are creating this living, breathing entity that is our relationship. And it's our job to, just as parents, it's our job to nurture this relationship and help it grow and help it blossom and become everything it's meant to be, everything it has the potential to be. So, and that's an analogy that I love. And, when we came up with it, it wasn't designed that we sitting down, right, how can we describe our relationship? It was just something that happened. We were just having a conversation one day and it's like, do you know what? Yeah. A really good, honest relationship, healthy relationship, it's like being a parent. It's this thing that we have together, and it's our job, it's our role and responsibility to help nurture it, protect it, help it grow and develop and become all it can be. And so with regards to showing up, we do it all the time too. We show up all the time, but then we respond to everything that shows up. And we've had some particular challenges, in our relationship to this point, but we are still in that phase where we are showing up constantly, and we always will be. I don't think that will ever change. And we respond to what shows up. So no matter what obstacle comes our way, certain things take a toll on me. Other things may take a toll on my fiance, and it's not that it doesn't affect me. If it affects the relationship, it affects both of us. So it's not that something doesn't affect me, but if I can see that she's having a more difficult time dealing with it, then rather than join in with for want of a better description, the pity party and the woe is me side of things, I will tend to take a stance and respond to it. And together we pull ourselves out of it and we think about it from the perspective of, okay, so this has happened to us. Does it suck? Yes. Is it bad news? Potentially. But there is always an opportunity in it too. And there's always a way through it. And we will make it through it because we're a team, because we're strong, because we respond to what shows up together as a team. And so that's what I wanted to share that. And that's, just an insight into me and how I am in my most intimate relationship is the fact that we show up for each other constantly. We have each other's backs. We know that no matter what happens to us, what happens in the world, what happens to our relationship, we will always be there for each other. And we show up all the time, every day. And we respond to what shows up together as a unit. So whether it's something that shows up in my life or shows up in her life, we respond to it together. So the third thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is understanding. And this was actually something that I was talking about with my fiance, funnily enough, just this morning. It was about a group that she's a member of on Facebook, and there was a woman in there that was talking about how her husband, it was like a relationship group, and her husband has this attitude and this idea that because she's recently had a baby and she's due back to work, but it's likely to be working from home given the nature of her job and the current situation. So she has been at home with this baby for the last 6 months or so. And given the nature of the United States and not much maternity leave, which is kind of really, she's thinking she's had a really tough time with it. And she said to her husband, I'm taking this from my fiance. She said to her husband, apparently, that, do you know what? After everything, I need a vacation. I need a holiday. And his response was, I hate to say it, but typical of some men, and a large portion of men too, sadly, in that, what do you mean you need a vacation? You spend all day at home. Really, guys? Really? So understanding is crucial in everything. Okay, to be able to understand that yours is not the only perspective. There are other people in this game that we call life. So taking the time to put yourselves in their perspective, in their shoes, and see their perspective, there's that word again, is critical. It really is the most important thing you can do, especially in a relationship. Because when you can put yourself in your wife's shoes, your girlfriend's shoes, your husband's shoes, boyfriend's shoes, whatever it might be, and see their point of view, you can understand the way they see the world, and you can understand that, okay, so, you're off to work and, you get stressed at work, but you get to leave it there and you come home, and she might have had to spend the entire day dealing with shit from contractors, from cold callers, from spammers, from, the people on Facebook having a go, friends on Facebook unfriending her because she has an opinion and she shares it. And on top of all that, a 2-month-old or a 6-month-old child that's clearly unhappy about something and has been screaming all day. Okay? That's going to be no vacation for her. So just the idea that this guy's response was, what do you mean you need a vacation? You've been at home all day for the last 6 months. And we just, the way that we work, the way that my fiance and I gel and we talk, it's very lighthearted in very many ways. But it was a case of, right, do you know what? I think the best thing she could do would be to just book a ticket, book a flight, book a hotel for a week, and say to her husband to say, okay, I think you've worked really hard too, so you need the same vacation I've had. So I'm going away for a week. Good luck. And we laughed about that, but honestly, that's personally what I would do, because understanding is something that you either have the ability the natural feel for the situation, to be able to step into someone else's shoes and see their perspective, or you can't. And people who can't and just don't bother or don't see it necessary because theirs is the only opinion that matters, there are people out there like that, then they're the ones that kind of need the shove in the right direction. So that is the type of person where I would very much recommend, okay, book a ticket, book a hotel room, go and see your mum, do whatever you need to do, but basically leave it till the last minute and say, darling, I think you need a rest too. You need a vacation too. So why don't you take my vacation? As you know, you spend time at home. You stay home all week as you think it's such a pleasure and it's such a vacation, and I'll go and see my mum, or I'll go on holiday for a week. Okay? And so it's, as much as that's kind of like a funny example, it is honestly what some people need, men especially. Now, we've been talking for a couple of weeks, my fiance and I, about another project that we want to work on, which is a channel dedicated not just to women, but to the ideal of respecting women and treating women properly and understanding that they are this magnificent creature, this giver of life. And I think so many men need to know that. So many men need to understand that. So that's what we've been talking about doing. So it's likely to come about in the next week or so. So stay tuned for that one. But for now, just to recap, we've been talking about showing up, which is being fully present with somebody or a situation. It doesn't have to be an individual. It can be a circumstance or a situation. If you are fully present with it, you will be able to respond to it, to what shows up, in a much more productive, powerful way that moves you forward. And then we talked about understanding, which is just basically the ability to take those steps back, create more awareness, see things from a different perspective. Usually it's a specific individual's perspective, and understand that not everybody experiences life the way that you do. So things are going to be different for other people. So the understanding element is a critical component in any kind of personal achievement, any kind of creation of a life that makes you go, wow. The ability to step back and understand somebody else's perspective is a really good tool to have. And, you know, when it comes to creating life by design, it's a skill set that I would recommend you learn, that you pick up and practice. It's not something you learn, my bad. It's something that you hone. Okay, so you have the potential to be able to step back and see somebody else's perspective and understand the world through their eyes. So few people do it. So like I said, it's a great ability to learn, and it's a great ability to hone too. So, you know, you might have the basics in place, but to really nail it is, you know, it's going to set you up and it's going to help you through the entire process of creating life by design and living and untapping your unlimited potential and living that life that makes you go, wow. So that's it for this video, and I hope you can join me again in the next one. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed the content, leave a comment to let me know what you'd like me to talk about next, and subscribe to the channel for more great videos coming at you. Try and do them every day, but I'll do them as often as possible. So bye for now, and I'll talk to you again very soon.